Hey everybody, welcome out to the Dice Tower. My name is Chris Yi.
I'm Wendy Yi.
And I'm Roy Cannaday.
Today we're taking a look at this Brazil Imperial. This is brought over to the US from Portal Games, originally from Meeple BR, which stands for Brazil, actually.
I thought it stood for brr, it's cold in here.
It is kind of cold in here, but that's besides the point, Wendy.
It's not cold in Brazil, that's for sure.
All right, so this is billed as sort of a 4X Euro game. So we're going to determine whether that's the truth or not of it. First, Wendy's going to show you how it plays.
Brazil Imperial is a 4X game where players are expanding across the board, building and gaining resources. They are using their little pawns to attack each other, as well as exploring these nice little tokens over here, these little question marks, to see what is underneath them. The goal of the game is to have the most points across 3 eras. Each era is triggered by someone completing their era card numbered for that round. So example, as soon as era 1 card is completed, we now move on to era 2. Once an era 2 card is completed, we move around to era 3. And once the 3rd era card is completed, we trigger the end game. The player board here describes all of the actions that you have, or that you can take on a turn. And what you'll do is you'll place your little turn disc on one of the actions, and it has to be an action that you didn't place it on the turn before. And you just go ahead and go through and perform whatever is on that action space. Now, in the future, actions can be upgraded. If they do, you get both the top and the bottom benefit. Otherwise, you only get the top. Let's talk about the deploy action first. So this right here is what lets you get your troops on the map. So these military units right here have a cost underneath. You pay the cost and you can put out 1 troop or 2 troops if upgraded. You also get combat cards, and these are just little things that you can use during combat to give you extra bonuses or extra points. Next up is the painting action that lets you get these painting cards over here. They have a cost in the left-hand corner, the upper left, and then they have some sort of ongoing ability for the rest of the game. Now, there's different levels of cards in each one of these decks, so it starts out being very cheap and affordable and gets way more expensive. Now, the build action is how you get tiles onto the board. So if you look up here at the top of your player board, this shows all the buildings that are in the game. And each one of these little banners here shows a double side of a tile. So for example, Sawmill is on one side and the trading post is on the other. You pay the cost at the bottom, and it has to be in a location based on whatever is in the very bottom, this little point right here. So this has to be built on a wood space, grass space, gold space, grass space, and so forth. And then it produces whatever's at the top with that little gear symbol. Now, the renovate action is how you upgrade your tiles. So for example, the sawmill or the trading post, you can build each side from the get-go, or you can upgrade your sawmill to a trading post by simply flipping it over. Once a tile is empty, it is available to be renovated. You can flip it over. Or if it's empty, you can choose to add the resources to it that it produces. So it is either produce or flip over. We also have the manufacture action. This is how you upgrade the bottom spaces on your board. You pay the cost of the cubes and the hexes and the octagons, and then you can choose where they go based on the shape on the board. So I can upgrade my manufacture action, and hey look, now it costs 1 less resource every time that I manufacture. Harbor and trade are the last 2 actions. They're kind of separated by themselves because they're a little less efficient. The harbor just gives you 1 resource of your choice, and that will just go on your player board. You have 5 spaces to hold resources. And then finally, the trade action lets you trade different resources in and cards for additional gold, science, and gold cards. Now, after you take your action, you get to do 2 different types of movement. You get to take a basic move where you can move anything on the board, 1 space as you so desire. But then also, whatever action you selected for the round will determine 1 additional movement that you can take, or additional battle defense or strength if you took the harbor or trade actions. Finally, at the end of your turn, you can choose to play one of your era cards for points, as well as you unlock one of these buildings that goes on the map. When you do so, they give you endgame points, as well as this one up here will give you some resources. Players continue to take those actions and those movement points on all of their turns, and then finally after that 3rd age card is played, you count up all the points. And points come from a variety of places: cards, troops, upgrades, these buildings that you have unlocked, every building that you place on the board, your cities. So there's just tons of ways to get points in this game. You count all those up, and then the player with the most is the winner.
First of all, I think one of the things that really catches my eye about this is that it's a very eye-catching, it's a very beautiful game.
It's definitely very colorful. Like it gives you the vibe of Brazil for sure, with like all the colorful birds and stuff like that. It gives you like a good aesthetic vibe, and the what is it, the artist or picture cards or whatever they are in the game?
Yeah, the painting cards.
Painting cards. They have like great art on all of them as well, and are very evocative of like different characters throughout the history and stuff like that. So it's really cool.
Yeah, and on top of that, one of the things that actually caught my eye that was really impressive was they have a whole section of the front page of the rulebook here called historical art credits. So they're actually crediting different classic painters that a lot of the illustrations in the game are based off of.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, I really like. There's a lot of there's a whole second book here about history and the different subjects there. I like the
Sloth.
production. And that's Sloth.
That Sloth is amazing.
I like the variable map
Sid.
setup so that you can change it for different size groups. You know, you've got a couple 2-player maps, a couple 3-player maps, a couple 4-player maps, and so and they're easy to set up because the pieces are just well sized. They're big pieces, medium and small.
I think there's even more scenarios you can find online if
probably.
you've played through all of the maps.
Or make
that
up your
come in.
own.
And and it's like pretty large pieces. Like put these 3 large pieces together and some lakes. Like I hate when it's like, okay, I have to go through and put every single one of these. Anyway, so it's quick setup. The resource tray in there also I think helps for the quick setup. You can store the different buildings of each type. I think it's a well-produced and well-made game.
Yeah, it looks really good on the table.
I just wish that resource tray, the smaller resources, they're a little hard to get out. It's minor, it's not like that important, but they're just a little bit too small for comfort.
Gotcha.
Yeah, when you're digging for the last 2 sugar cane, you're like, come on!
Please.
Give me my sugar cane.
But everything else in that, that insert is good.
All right, elephant in the room. This is billed as kind of a 4X style game, but it's also
I would say
advertised
it's more
as
of like
Euro.
a Civ-y game, you know? So, I mean, I guess maybe they advertise as 4X, but it feels more like, oh, you have a little civilization you're building up. It doesn't have all the... I mean, I guess it has a little bit of that stuff. You're building stuff up. You're doing a little bit of exploring. There's a little bit of tokens and stuff you flip over with that. The combat is extremely minor in this, but it does exist. So there's that, you know. So this is like
You check all the X's off.
You technically check all the X's off. And
four-check
normally,
game.
as far as 4X goes, like Civilization games fit in that genre normally. So, I mean...
That's true. That is true.
It's not going to impress you and say, whoa, this is such an aggressive game. It's pretty far from. But if someone is marching their pieces close to yours,
you start to sweat a little bit. You're like, are they really going to do it?
Yeah, I feel
Are
like
they really going to do it?
Combat, because you don't get any real benefits from combat unless you happen to have a card that says, like, if you instigate combat and you win, you get 3 points or whatever. So there are cards that will give you points for combat, but you have to have already drawn into them for it to be useful. But I feel like it puts that pressure on because it is a possibility.
I think more aggressive in like the more aggressive part of this game is building your string of buildings closer to someone else.
Right.
Because you are not allowed to build within one space of an opponent, and you're like, stop it! My land!
Don't cut off
Yeah,
my
you're just
land!
preventing expansion
You're
entirely.
like, I need to expand that direction, so I have more room to expand this direction, which is nowhere near you.
Which, if you move your little military guys out there, it's harder for them to build.
Right.
So, and expand out as far.
So I think it's not terribly aggressive. It's very much
Right.
Well, I think what's great about those is very much quick turns, just kind of quick.
Yeah.
You select one action, and it has one, maybe a second effect if it's upgraded, and you can move some military pieces.
One thing I'll say about this is it's extremely strategic. You know, a lot of it is about managing your resources and what resources does that building cost. And if I play this building, it's going to give me these resources, which I can turn these resources into this building and this building into these resources. Majority of the time when I was playing this, I was thinking pretty far ahead on my turns, being like, okay, I'm going to do this and this and this and this and this and this. It almost felt like I was like on a train track, and I'm like, this is the way the train's going. As long as somebody doesn't move their military guy in the way or encroach on my territory too much, I'm probably going to be able to fulfill all of these like 5 turns in a row without anybody being able to stop me. And the other thing is when you have those artist or picture cards, or I keep saying the wrong name for them.
Paintings.
Painting cards. It's art somehow. Painting cards. Whenever a really good painting card comes up, it's like, that actually makes me get like I can slot this train car into this to make it go a little bit faster. Now my engine's going faster. But yeah, I mean, it has those interesting decisions of that stuff, but I don't know how terribly different it would be from game to game. What do you think?
So I feel like when I play this, those decisions where you're sliding those train cars in, I feel like that happens more for me than maybe it happens for you. Because I do feel like as the paintings come out, as people move their pawns around, I'd make those decisions of, oh my goodness, do I need more military? Do I need this particular painting upgrade? Do I need to upgrade some actions first? So It's probably just because I'm not quite as smart as you. But I'm constantly changing those 3 turns that I'm thinking ahead. And so I'm with you there that like I want to think ahead, but it's like, ooh, I feel like I'm constantly changing and switching up that strategy of what are the next 3 turns.
I think there's a large chunk of the game where it's just kind of, I'm going to do this one, then this, and then bounce back to the one I'm on.
Right.
But once, it takes a while, but once the encroaching of land starts coming closer to mine, that's when I think the sequencing...
Start getting wrenches thrown into stuff, right?
Yeah. Or when a juicy painting comes out and I'm like,
I want to grab that before Chris grabs that, because that'll make me be able to build this building faster.
Yeah. It's pretty decent from game to game, the difference, but it's not going to be as player driven, I think, as a lot of like more true 4X.
There could be interaction in this game, like grabbing the paintings fast or moving your territory towards them or doing combat, but it really doesn't feel like there's that much interaction. It feels almost like you're heads down building in your little area until some of those things matter, you know. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of the 4X genre, you know. I mean, I played most of all the space ones. I really want to see more civilization-driven 4X games, but this one for me, I am the opposite of you, Wendy. I like the interaction. I like doing things that mess up other people's plans or make me think more tactically, like and on my toes, and this is very much not that. This is more for the like, turn these resources into this to be able to build this building, then turn these resources into that to be able to build that building, which is fun in some ways. I'm building up that engine, but for me it wasn't as high, you know.
And see, that's the stuff that I loved, is I'm not typically a 4X fan because all I want to do is 2 of the X's, not the other ones.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I don't really want to explore that much. I don't really want to combat. I just want to sit over here and build an engine.
And those are the ones that this is live on,
And so
right?
this is totally what I get to do, is I get to build that engine and be like, this is all the fun stuff.
All 4 of the X's are there, right? Expanding and exploring for sure. But
I mean, I guess you're not really going to fully exterminate anyone in this game.
You're definitely
not.
That would be
crazy.
There's just a little bit of...
No, I might take your building near the end of the game. Woo! 3-point swing down for you and up for me. That could be big.
Right.
But once again, it only kind of matters closer to the end.
So in the overview, I didn't explain combat because it's not one of the actions. But if you happen to move your military onto someone's city or building or onto space where they already have a military unit, then it's the combat level is their victory points of whatever those things are worth that you move on to that space versus the victory points of your dude that moves there. And then there's, of course, combat cards that can add or detract. And then there's those couple minor actions that will add or detract as well.
I feel a lot of times in this, there's not that much benefit from actually like attacking someone.
Yeah.
You know? So it's kind of like, and I was just sitting there with my combat cards being like, if somebody attacks me, I'm going to defend with this.
I've got it.
And never get to use it because they just kind of sit there.
Well, I feel like the combat's very math. And I appreciate that. From my perspective, I really appreciate that. Of I go in there and I say, okay, they might have a card or 2 that could add to this, but they're not going to come out of nowhere with suddenly like this whole army that I can't beat. Like if we're pretty close and I can math out a couple points ahead, I'm very likely to win that space.
Sure, yeah. You have actually very little discomfort of being like, is she going to make that move? You're like, well, mathematically...
It doesn't make sense for her too, so why would she unless she has a whole bunch of cards?
So I like a lot of what's going on in here, and we're pointing out some of the areas where the flavor is weaker. It's more of like a La Croix 4X. Let's come on down to scores. Roy, why don't we start with you?
So for me, I'm giving it a 6.5 overall. I really love the way the game looks. I mean, I still love the engine building stuff in it and stuff like that, but this is not a game that I would ask to bring back out to the table. I mean, there's other 4X-y Civ-style games that I would probably gravitate towards before this one, but I could see where some people that really want ones that don't have that as much interaction and would enjoy this game. So 6.5 for me, not super high. I don't think there's too much wrong with the game, just not really for me.
Let's see. I'm trying to guess which one of us is
higher?
lower. Yeah.
I'll go.
Okay.
So I'm a 7.5 on this. I did really enjoy the engine building. I enjoyed a lot of the way that the buildings work, the way that you upgrade them, and the way that you can produce resources on them, but you can only do it when they're empty, is one of those things that I like simultaneously love and hate at the same time, because you have to plan things out just right. Otherwise, you have to waste an action to get a single good so you can build something to clear them off. So I really enjoy that kind of challenge, but I think I enjoy that challenge because I'm not worried about Roy coming and beating down my walls. Right. So 7.5 for me. I think it's a good, solid game. I enjoy it.
For me, it's also a 7.5. Actually, I really enjoy just kind of the loop of building up the resources, building up stuff. And I do enjoy that partway through the game, the wrinkles, the wrenches do start getting thrown into your gears. And then you have to be more reactionary to that. But I like that there's a good amount of time where you're building and you're just kind of playing your own thing. And that works only because the turns are so fast.
Right.
And because those paintings, that's my favorite part of the game. I love upgrading your actions. I'm a sucker for that. I'll always get like 4 or 5 things upgraded, even if it's not the best and I lose like I do in this game a lot. And I also want to get a bunch of paintings. Why? Because they're fun and they're cool.
And they're just permanent. They're just like, hey, now suddenly my whatever building reduces 1 more.
Yeah.
Yep.
I wish there was a little bit more flavor of the combat and a little bit more flavor of the exploration and stuff, and that's why it's a 7.5. I'm recommending it. I think it's a good game, and I have fun with it, but you got to know going into it that this is more of that, more of the stuff that Wendy's kind of highlighting than the stuff that typically would draw in Roy, for example.
I do wonder if you made your own map, because typically on the maps you start at the farthest points possible from each other. I do wonder if you just said, hey, we're going to start really close to each other, if that would change the feel of the game.
I'm sure it would, but I don't know that it would bring out the parts that I like in it, but just because combat's not that rewarding and things like that. So,
okay.
Or interaction doesn't help you win the game. So.
Yeah, I wonder. But I think that's neat too, that there's just a lot
But
of
that challenge for space.
Yeah, there's that whole modular map. Do with it what you want.
Yeah.
All right, so there you go. That's our thoughts on Brazil Imperial. Until next time, my name is Chris Yi.
I'm Wendy Yi.
And I'm Roy Cannaday.
Avenge me.